would like to see, I want to just check, because I'm checking through the group, doing a little tour around the group to make sure that everyone's perception, clearing fatigue out of the system. There can be layers of fatigue, sleep, and dream deprivation. It can happen. And so this washes. And this is a technology you can use. Is that through the naga that comes into the body, a wave of refreshment can come through the physiology. And it literally washes out the fatigue in the system. And I feel along with that some like emotional fatigue, also mental fatigue, fatigue in the eyes, fatigue in the senses of perception. So sweet. And as that wave of freshness, it comes in through the crown of the head, as it washes through the body. This is where we get to this interesting bit that I was just looking at the last couple of weeks. But as it does that, it seems to come through with these very specific structures, very specified. So may your bodies continue to just enjoy that wave of washing fatigue, washing feelings of being overwhelmed or too much, just washing it through the system, washing it through the system. And it goes into the cord of light and it kind of swirls around and it goes back to Mother Earth. Mother Earth is the great composter. She has no problem. You can give her all that stuff. She's like, I'll make something good out of that. Beautiful. This is beautiful. I'm getting a validation. Both my ears just opened up and I'm like hearing twice what I was hearing before a second ago. So may everyone's senses of perception enjoy this washing, to open up, to wash out all the fatigue and overwhelm and trauma, any discomforts of any sort. Also I'm seeing through the joints, because the joints in the body are places where there's sort of a connection between two different bits, or not only moving, but when we're talking about refined perception, we're really talking about a junction between individual experience and collective experience. And so the joints are also receiving, scanning up and down the spine, knees, hips, shoulders. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And what I'm seeing is so sweet, is that the microbiome is rising to support by producing very, very delicate neurochemicals which soothe and smooth the process for everyone. Your beautiful, sweet, precious microbiomes that are in your service through your lifetime are enjoying this. So just sending some waves of love and gratitude to the microbiome, and then back to silence again. The whole thing back to silence. Beautiful. Okay. This one ties right into the healing that we were just doing. This says, I've been struggling for months with feeling exhausted, like bone weary, as if I'm slogging through mud. It leaves me unmotivated to make changes, be creative, or even have fun. This feels more physical than emotional, as I don't feel depressed. I'd like to be able to discern whether this is an energy on the planet or is it personal, and with the ability or skill to be able to discern what's mine or not would be so helpful as I navigate this world. So this is really two questions. The first question is, what can we do to get rid of that deep fatigue? And I thought that this question was really, that first part was really interesting, because that was literally a healing theme this week. And it's so common that healings will come through in themes. So this energy medicine that can wash through the body and can wash out fatigue is part of the means of approaching this particular problem. But there's, I think, another even deeper, more fundamental point that we need to touch on. So let's do that. Then I'll go to the second part of the question. Okay, so we all hold in common this, well, this actually ties into the second part of the question. Okay, I'm organizing my thoughts, everybody. Okay, so there are parts of ourself which are absolutely specified, individual. This is me. This is my hair. Okay, this little piece of hair right here doesn't belong to any of you guys, right? This is my ear, right? There are parts that are obviously clearly separate. They're obviously clearly separate. But the finer we go, the less separate things become. And when we start to get into, as I tend to divide up this this particular axis of the ocean of consciousness from physical, material, etheric, I'm still separate, mental, I'm basically still separate at that point. Although at the mental level, I start to share with my ancestors quite a bit, because a lot of people have like cycles of different thought patterns and stuff that are learned. There's some degree of learned behavior that connects us to an environment at the mental level. At the emotion level, we really start to reflect off of each other, and so we start to, it becomes a little, at that point things can become a little bit hazy. What's me and what's the person that I'm looking at? And that's where the refined perception, which I am going to circle back around to, comes in, so that we can tell what is really me. Like even at the mental level, like, well, like, is this belief my belief, or is this really something that I'm carrying from 6 generations of ancestors or something, right? So we need to be able to discern. And the answer is yes. It is both you and it is your ancestors, because we are sharing. And then when we get from the emotional level down into like the astral and causal levels, obviously at the level of pure being, there's no separation at all, right? But at the astral and causal levels, those are definitely collective levels of self. That's where it's kind of like a fully accepted, this is where you and me, this is where we connect. The astral level is where we interface with the web of life. And so the astral body has always looked, since the beginnings of this journey, like threads, you know, like fabric, like a kind of fabric. The web of life also like a kind of fabric. And when consciousness moves through the web of life, it jumps, it creates like a little river, and it goes from the point of perception out to the flower, or whatever it is that we're looking at. So at that level, it's a little bit like taking our world down to atoms or something like that. You know, I say I'm separate, but if I'm looking at this whole world in atoms, it's just a bunch of atoms. So at the astral level, we kind of just have like these threads everywhere, threads of consciousness flowing, connecting, interacting, or we can look at them as vibrations and frequencies. It all depends on your angle and what you need to accomplish at the moment. And then, of course, the causal level of creation, we all share that level in common. And this is where we come to the deeper level of healing for this question, is we all share the causal level of creation in common, but we all divide the causal level of creation up slightly differently. It's like Minecraft, if anybody's familiar with the game. It's like you've got everybody's got the same basic building blocks, but then everybody builds their little area slightly differently. It's like that. And so, like a sandbox game. And so that's why they're so popular. That's why, I mean, the world of Minecraft is like as big as our solar system now or something, if it's measured in meters, something like that. It's like a huge thing. So anyway, yeah, so what can happen is we can carry divisions in the causal level. We can carry regions. You can say we have regions, specific regions that are resonating for us personally, which are where the walls are made of karma. And so those regions are producing influence. They're producing structures that are responsible for the manifested form that are not in favor of your highest evolution, that are not in favor of all good. There can be forms in the causal field of the physiology which actually cause leaks. They actually cause your life force to disperse, that actually are responsible for a person's life force being inaccessible to them. So you could almost think of it as energetic parasitic forms or something like that. They're forms. And again, a lot of these come from old patterns that people weren't even aware of. The tendency for forms like that is to camouflage themselves or to sit in a place of, to bind to other forms in such a way that they're not recognizable. You know, it looks like maybe something good, maybe something nice. So I'm looking. So what is happening, and I'm just reporting as it's happening, that concept was offered to being. And being came back with this point that these forms, because they have a kind of they have destructive laws of nature in them, they have a place in creation, right? Because sometimes something does need to break down. But those forms which are sitting delicately, which are interestingly founded upon sense of self, which is not flattering, founded on a sense of self, any kind of self-identification that's connected to not allowing your own full potential to come to the surface, basically. They are being flagged right now. They're being flagged. They're being identified with a little marker. And the marker, what it does is it simply allows you, it's like a helper for the refined perception. It's a helper for the perception of being to identify those forms. And here's the important part. The marker carries with it, oh God, I love this concept. I think it's been around on the internet for a little while, so say my sons, but it came to me and I just fell in love with it. So I have to share it with you guys, us oldsters who aren't on Reddit like all the time. So it's the difference between hot and cold anger. Because as I said, everything in creation has its place and has a value, but hot anger comes in like a terrorist's suicide bomber, right? And it just goes in and it blows everything out of the waters and it takes out everything in one shot. And it's highly destructive, and often after work, after subtle work that has been leveraging that type of anger, a lot often needs to reconstruct, and it can be very difficult. It can be very uncomfortable. Whereas cold anger is like a surgeon's scalpel, which saves lives. Cold anger has so much discrimination with it. And we could even, at this point, think of discrimination as a tool of our perceptual capabilities, or a tool in our tool chest here. Seeing discrimination activating for everyone, just by the way, in those three centers. It's part of the processing of the experience. It's using discrimination. And that ties into this lady's question, like, how can she tell the difference between something that's her and something that's of an ancestor? But what I learned in the last couple of weeks is, even if we're doing some kind of healing for the ancestor, and even if it's something that that ancestor needs, it could be difficult for them. And if the healing isn't handled with utmost delicacy, then the result could be too much transformation comes to the surface too quickly. So what we're doing is evolving the surgeon's scalpel. And what that means is silence of being in the areas of the brain, which are, and the other three areas, all three of these areas, in the junction between where we respond in a fight or flight way, or where we respond with right reason and logic, analysis, synthesis, like that. And it only takes the tiniest fraction of silence to make, for a fraction of a second of silence, to make the difference of processing the information in fight or flight mode, which results in hot anger, or in deepest understanding, deepest, broadest comprehension, most balanced analysis of the coexisting pairs of opposites. So what that is divinity sliding in. Being is sliding in. It's not just sliding into this place between the limbic system and the whole prefrontal cortex area, which are, by the way, those are the parts of the brain associated. The limbic system associates with the fight or flight response, and the prefrontal cortex associates with the logic and reason and thinking things through and moral codes and that whole thing. But the heart also does, and the gut also does. The thing is, silence of being moves at infinite speed. So when it's present in that gap, you don't lose the time that you need. If the need is for fight or flight, you don't lose it. It allows for the maintenance of that part of the system as needed. But it also gives the added advantage of allowing one's anger to move into a situation which requires transformation with measured regularity. It is so powerful. It is so powerful. It means not being jerked around by one's own processing capacity. It means balancing the response in such a way that even in the worst of situations, the individual response does not self-damage. The individual response supports evolutionary transformation through Dharma. Good job, everybody. Good job.